Hi, guys and gals and other creatures of the world. We're doing a review of the Aztec software interdisciplinary study material. I wish I could add more words to that to make it sound more fancy. I'll try my best. Um, we were doing the section of math, and we have reached just talking about the number lines and comparing and ordering of numbers is the section. So when you have numbers on the number line, obviously you have negative on the left side of zero, positive on the right side, and they go on to infinity on both sides. If asked the absolute value, however, you don't take into consideration the value of the number, you just look at the distance from zero. So even if you compare a positive 5 and negative 5, they're both going to have the same distance from zero, which is 5 spaces. So the absolute value of both positive and negative 5 is 5, which is also called the magnitude, which is the distance from zero, or the largeness of the absolute value of that number. It's just counting the number of units from zero to that number. And note, if you add two negative numbers, your answer or sum is going to be a negative number. So you keep the signs of the numbers in your equation, and then if you add positive, obviously they're positive. If one is positive, one is negative, or the signs are different, you would subtract the number that has the larger sign, or the number with the greatest magnitude. You will have the sign of that number in your answer. Okay, so also adding a negative number is the same as subtracting a positive number. Just review stuff. If you subtract a negative number, or also called a double negative, you're going to have a positive. So 2 negatives equals a positive. So 2 minus negative 2 is like 2 plus 2, which is 4, for example. Or another example, minus 4 or negative 4 minus negative 5 is the same as adding 5. So negative 4 plus 5 is 1. So since 5 is a bigger magnitude, you use the sign of the bigger number for your answer. Okay, next thing is order of operations, which tells you if you have like a long equation with a bunch of operations inside of it, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction, etc., how do you know which part to do first in order to not make a mistake in your complicated equation? So first you do what is inside the parentheses. Parentheses are used for clarifying and combining like terms. So first you do whatever's inside parentheses. Multiplication is the next thing you do. You do multiplication before addition and subtraction, and you always work left to right. So this is not so parentheses comes before anything else, and multiplication, and which is like division or the inverse of division. Okay, so when dealing with expressions containing a division bar, treat the numerator and the denominator as if they are separate expressions until they are in their simplest form. So you are basically acting like the numerator is inside of parentheses and the denominator is inside parentheses. You do each thing until you come to a simplified answer of numerator and also the denominator. You don't You don't combine the two or anything until you're done dealing with each. An equation is balanced when there are equal amounts on both sides. Is a note, and that's why it's called an equation, from the word equal. When you solve equations, you should try to isolate the variable, which means if you have like x, y, etc., try to get the variables on one side, like not both variables, but at least one variable should be on one side, and take everything else and put it on the opposite side. So like if you have x plus 1 equals y plus 1, try to get it so it's just x equals, I don't know, that equation was weird. And so it's just, it's going to be x equals y, I guess. Okay, anyway, just try to get x on one side or y on one side. That means you're isolating the variable. And then what you do, you plug in the solution for one variable into the other equation, so that way you can find the other variable, and then you plug it back in you plug in the answer back into the original equation, and you can find the first variable. So first you plug in the term for x into the second equation and you get y. Then whatever you get for y, like if you get 5, you plug that 5 into the original equation and solve for x, and you'll find x. Then you'll have your x and your y, which is a coordinate, and that will be your x and y answer. And the way you write that is x comma y, that's your coordinate, and usually that is put in parentheses. The next section is the way you will get better is just by practicing. They'll usually give you 2 equations with x and y. So first step, you would isolate one variable, plug it into the second equation, then plug the answer into the first equation, and that's how you find x and y, or the answer. So using and converting ratios to lowest terms. Ratios are like fractions, basically. They might be written in a different format. Like you could write 2 to 1, which is like writing 2 over 1 in a fraction or whatnot. So it compares the value that is twice the value of another number or another value. So in ratios, you only compare similar measurements. Like you can only compare two weight measurements, or 2 quantity measurements, or 2 height measurements. They have to be the same measurement. You can't compare height to weight, or quantity to like volume. They have to be the same units, the same thing. So in a ratio, you have 2 amounts being compared, and even if the amounts change at a consistent rate, the ratio of the 2 amounts will still remain the same, regardless of how many times you compare the amounts, since the change of each is consistent at the same rate. So the ratio is going to be the same. If you know the ratio between 2 values, therefore, and you are given one number or one side of the ratio, you can predict the ratio of the second number based on the ratio that you know. So for example, you have 7,000 nonfiction books to 3,000 fiction books. You can write that with a colon, 7,000 to 3,000, or simplify 7 to 3, or with the fraction bar, 7 over 3. Comparing nonfiction to the total number, 7,000 over 10,000 is 7 to 10, or compare part to part or whole to part.